Greetings, greetings, one and all. It's Dr. Jonathan Ellerby with another live 12 at 12. And today is kind of extra special because the topic is digital detox. And why is that extra special? Well, it's certainly extra special because most people, or many people on the planet, have been gorging on digital entertainment, education, and interaction. But it's also particularly special because I'm actually taking a day off tablets, screens, phones, but I'm still doing this for you. So there are three things that I want to talk about when it comes to understanding the importance of digital detox and then what it actually looks like, how you can do it, or what experts recommend. If you haven't been with me before, you can learn more at jonathanellerby.com. You can follow me on Facebook. You can sign up for my newsletter through my website. You can get a free book, Spiritual Experience. And I'm doing this every day at 12 o'clock. It's almost alwast live, occasionally recorded. But this is a way for us to stay connected, to stay centered, and to continue exploring what it means to be fully human, to have a full mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical engagement of life. Sometimes we start with poems and meditations, and sometimes, like right now, we just dive in. So, here's the three things that I'd like you to know about or pay attention to. One, there is a cost or an effect every time you are interacting with a digital interface. So your phone, your TV, your tablet, all those things. We're going to talk about what those effects are in really broad terms. The next thing is actually much, much more important and is always overlooked in the blogs and the articles and the research on the impact of a highly digitally focused lifestyle. And that is not to talk about the physical, neurological, emotional, and interpersonal costs of being on devices. It's actually the cost of what we are not doing. And that's very, very significant because a lot of the side effects, or you might say harmful effects or dangers of a heavily digitally dependent lifestyle are naturally mediated, or you could say medicated, by the very things that a digital focus takes you away from. If you can balance the two, then you can actually have a little more than what experts might recommend. And then finally, there's kind of a secret third thing that's not just the aspects of self and life that we're neglecting, which is really our second category, but it is our capacity to connect with spirit, with energy, with intuition, and how that can be impaired by simply too much time in the digital world. So these are the three things we're talking about. Let's review. The first is the side effects of being on digital devices excessively. So there is tons of research out there on this. If you want to know more, you can just go to your favorite search engine and put in harmful effects of social media, cell phones, screen time. You get the idea. Generally speaking, what we see is that the main consistent physiological side effect is that we see a shortening of attention that actually becomes neurologically embedded, right? So we kind of start to cultivate pathways that predispose us to shorter and shorter attention spans. In other words, the phones and the tablets have been adapted to us and our habits, our desire to click, our desire to be attracted to certain colors, our desire to get results in short order. But on the other hand, just as the digital world has been shaped around our habits and tendencies, our own nervous systems then start to adapt in kind. So we see this a lot with young people, but it's clearly happening with all ages. And that means that we are looking to be entertained faster. We're looking to get information faster. We're looking to get satisfaction faster. It's not just a psychological consequence. We're actually seeing this in the neurology, which means once you take that phone away, it doesn't go away right away. It carries with us into the next meeting or into the next day or whatever it is, depending on how deep your digital immersion is. So having time away is critical, and having time to enrich your mind, to be engaged in broader landscapes and other kinds of activities, in real world activity, and for that matter, even in terms of vision and interaction, to be with a three-dimensional landscape that is not constantly 12 inches from your nose. One of the other things that we see that's very common in the medical and psychological research is higher rates of anxiety and even depression that are coming out of excessive screen use. Now, the depression seems to be linked to the first thing I talked about, which is that as people are unconsciously being groomed to get entertainment and distraction quicker and quicker, they become more easily dissatisfied and frustrated with everyday life, everyday people, everyday situations. But the other factor in terms of anxiety has to do with the pleasure response that is typically aggravated and activated in terms of online gaming, online entertainment, and yes, even social media right down to the texts you get. So there's a certain kind of pleasure that we get from knowing that people are liking what we're doing, are watching what we're doing, that we have more followers and so on. On the other hand, the desire for that increase in intention, that increase in praise and approval, because that's kind of what your likes are. It's sort of like the old experiments where a rat gets a little, sugar cube or something like that every time it does a certain behavior. Well, it experiences pleasure, so it goes back to that behavior again and again and again till it's addicted. But it also means that it goes into an experience of withdrawal or anxiety almost as soon as it fears or feels that the reward is being taken away. So that's why we have this compulsion to check messages even when we're not expecting a message. That's why we have this compulsion to see how many followers we have or how many people liked something we liked, or for that matter, just to see who called and we missed it. Ironically, what happens is not only do we now have this nervous system on high alert, but we actually become more invested in and interested in the actual reward cycle than what's on the other side of it. In other words, it doesn't really matter who texted. It doesn't really matter who liked us. It doesn't really matter what their values are. We just want the positive stimulus. Now, the important thing to remember about the research on this is that it's not about whether you believe it or not. It's not about whether you feel like this or not. You could be a very sensible person who mostly uses your digital life to enrich yourself with documentaries and learning about the world, and that's great. But it doesn't change the fact that the very platform design, from Amazon to your texts to any kind of social media you follow, including me, is built in such a way that they want to get your attention more and more. Whether it's Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, or Google, these are the big ones that people call FANG, F-A-N-G, sorry. They're building these things to intentionally appeal to the addictive quality of the brain because they want to take you out of the stuff that's good and educational and by choice and into anything and everything else, so you'll spend more time on there and, guess what? See more advertising, share more about who you are through your profile and likes, and they, in turn, will sell that to advertisers. That's a pretty crazy world. That's not... And that's not supposition, that's a simple universal fact at this point. So let's move now to the next element, the next sort of danger of too much digital focus in your life. And it's pretty simple, actually. It's not the side effects of being on screens all the time that we've just talked about. It's what screens are taking away from us. The desire to exercise, the desire to have meaningful conversations, the desire to read a physical book, to put your hands in the earth and be a part of a garden instead of watching a gardening show. What we forget is that real life interaction gives us something through the subtle nuances of experience, energy, emotion, sense, that we just can't get from a flat screen. So a great example again, and that's what we're doing today, we're gardening. Watching a gardening show might be educational and enriching and inspiring. That's great. But it'll never do for you what the chemicals of a plant can do for you. It'll never do for you what contact with the soil will do for you. It is simply, literally, physically impossible. As a great example of this, if you look at the research on forest bathing, starting in Japan, scientists have tried to understand why is it that the real direct experience of nature is so different than just pictures of nature, fake depictions of nature like, fake plants and so on, or anything that might replace it digitally. And now we know that all organic life is emitting chemicals, energy fields, and other qualities, just in terms of touch and smell and taste, that we can't, not only can we not get in the digital world, but they're actually good for us. So, in short, the second thing you want to pay attention to is not the expense of the digital world, but what is it replacing? And you need to make a list. What are the things I need to get back to? What are the things that I love to do that cannot be replaced digitally? So that's really your homework. What are the things I love to do that I can't do digitally? Now, admittedly, in this time of pandemic and quarantine, the digital world has saved many of us, and it's great that we can connect with people at a distance. But still, as things change, and with whatever control we have, ask yourself, what can the computer not do for me? What can my phone not do for me? And simply do more of that. Put it in your calendar, block time in your day. There's nothing that will replace the real world and its enriching effect on your life, your mind, your heart, and your nervous system. The final point, and we just have about a minute left here, is to remember that as we have evolved over the last 100 years into a pretty flat, mechanistic, scientific version of the world, we have really undermined the significance of subtle energy, intuition, and spirituality. And what I mean by that is, for the absolute vast majority of human history until present, I mean, we're talking a blip in human history, human beings have always believed, felt, known, and documented that there is more going on in this universe than can be recorded on a screen or even measured in a physical touch. That the subtle presence of spirit itself is something we crave, something we long for. And so the practice of mindfulness, meditation, contemplative prayer, these things are not for the religious. They are for every human being to find the greatest experience of vibrant health we are capable of. Mindfulness, meditation, contemplative prayer. Sit in nature, sit in the real world, sit with other people, and see how those things speak to you in a way that nothing that is pre-recorded could ever possibly do for you. In the end, to close, what we want to do is block times in our day and throughout our week where we go away from the digital world. It's fine to have it. I'm not against it. I'm using it right now, and I enjoy it. But there's nothing that makes it more meaningful or enjoyable than being away from it. In addition to those times away from it where you need to really engage those other senses, both in the first dimension we talked about, which is engaging real life, and also that third dimension that we talked about in terms of engaging spirit, we also need to set aside digital Sabbaths. So a digital Sabbath is when you take a whole day or two, you let people know in advance, and you just unplug, and notice how differently you feel as you go through it. And don't forget to pay attention to the anxiety, the stress, and the worry that builds as you enter that phase of detox. Anyway, this is all the time we have for today. I hope this was helpful, and even though it runs somewhat contrary to everything I've said, please follow my page. If this was helpful, please share the message. I love you. I'm looking out for you, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.